Andrew and his team to come to the table. Our item number 10 on the agenda is the rate setting. Now that we have approved the annual budget formally, we need to strike our rates, and because this is a month delayed because of COVID-19, that must be done today. But Andrew, have you got any comments that you'd like to make just before we ask for questions or comments? Speaker, Andrew.
I'd like to introduce Eric Wen from our team, who does the rates modelling for us. Now, this is just the formal process to strike the rates based on the budget that you've just agreed to.
Thank you very much. Look, I'll move the recommendations. Councillor Simpson will second it. Thank you. And we have been through this process several times over, but if there's anybody, we will have a chance for questions and comments together. If there are any questions or comments, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to acknowledge that there is a lot of good in this budget. And as I've said to many people, the only good thing to come out of COVID is the self-discipline that we've had to impose upon ourselves that some of us have wanted to see on previous councils. So speaking at a personal level, I really welcome the Lena Council, and I really acknowledge the work that Patricia Reid has undertaken on our behalf. I welcome the divestment of non-strategic assets and recycling, if you will, and the willingness to really look to leverage off our balance sheet as best we can. And I really, really welcome the continuation of the investment in infrastructure for all the good reasons that you've said. So I think that the outstanding issue for me is the one of the value judgment over where we set the rates. Now, I was very angry that we did not go out with an option of a zero rates increase, because I think it would have helped the public better understand the predicament that council is in. And I think it was wrong to interpret those who came back with an option that wasn't 2.5% or 3.5% as a don't know. You know, that I think has just infuriated people. I cannot. I think if we'd put that information out there, information is power, and it would have you would have had a very different response from a lot of people. But the concern that I've got is we are going through difficult times, and capital valuation is such a blunt way to establish rating revenue, particularly at times like this, because it isn't a sophisticated way of measuring household income. And that is what is changing for so many Aucklanders. So that is why I have been really keen to see the 2.5 being adopted rather than the 3.5%. It's been great to hear the contribution from Councillor Collins and Councillor Simpson. I'm really pleased that they went out and saw Daryl Evans. He's one of the really inspired Aucklanders. I got to know him first when he was the electorate agent for Sandra Lee, and he's gone on and done a fantastic job at the Mangere Budgeting Services. But all of these places will tell you that the predicament and the concerns that people are feeling on whether or not they're going to have the income streams to be able to keep going in this COVID world that we're living in. So I don't want to labour these points here, Your Worship, but what I will say is that I think that we were at a point, and it comes back to debt, how we could have used that, recognising where the pain is. There's going to be pain irrespective of what decisions we take today, but I would like us to have some empathy for those Aucklanders whose income levels have changed dramatically and don't necessarily want to move their house. Now, Councillor Simpson will immediately jump in and say, well, we've got some rating relief programs that are new and different, but I don't know that will fully satisfy the concerns that are being expressed to me. So on that note, while I recognise a lot of the good things that have come about with this budget and all of the hard work and the work of staff, I would still have preferred, A, that we've gone out with our consultation in a far more genuine way, And I, for one, would prefer to see a 2.5% rate increase rather than 3.5%, and I will register my vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wishing to make a comment? Councillor Simpson, do you want to say anything as chair of the Finance Committee?
Not really. Let's ask a couple of questions to Kevin. Kevin, was the consultation document passed to go out unanimous?
Yes, the vote was unanimous.
Thank you. And did anyone put up a resolution to go up for zero?
No, it was agreed to go out on the form it went out on.
And then I have a question for Andrew. Andrew, could you tell me what you know? This is a very difficult time. I acknowledge it's a very difficult time. Councillor Fletcher makes that point. Andrew, could you please tell me what we know about other councils in New Zealand and the rates they are setting, noting everyone in New Zealand has a high, has a community that they represent that is challenged by COVID-19. Thank you.
Christchurch 3.5%, Dunedin 4.1%, Tauranga 4.7%, Hamilton 4.7%, Wellington 5.1% are the figures that I have here.
Thank you. I'll reserve my right potentially to speak later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Newman. This is comments and questions together, so please feel free to take your call now.
I mean, there's a degree of conjecture, and everybody's got their view of history in relation to this. My view of history in relation to the discussion that took place during the COVID-19 lockdown is that there was a discussion around a proposed amendment, an amendment that was proposed by Councillor Dalton and seconded by myself, to expand the consultation to include a zero rate increase option for discussion with the community, and that amendment was withdrawn when the mover and seconder discovered that there just wasn't going to be a wide degree of support around the table for us to be able to have a vote and to go and to consult with the community on that option. My personal view is that I wouldn't have been afraid to put up a zero rate increase option and to really spell out to the people of Auckland that the cost of a zero rate increase, which is actually a cut in real terms, a significant cut in real terms, would have meant a very significant cut to services. It wasn't an option for consultation because the amendment was withdrawn. And that is the history as I understand it. But, Your Worship, I'm happy to support the recommended resolutions here and say that I have to tell you that I've never been I'm an opponent of setting a high uniform annual general charge because I've always felt that actually the rates should land where they fall on the rateable capital value of the property. But I've always thought that the UAGC has been largely set in a way to try and achieve the greatest level of support from around the table. Is the UAGC too high for me? Actually, it is. And I suspect it's too high for Councillor Filipaina and Councillor Collins and Councillor Henderson. It's too high for me, but probably for different reasons. But you know, it is too high. But it is set at a level that I think achieves a broad degree of support, and I'm prepared to accept that. But perhaps in the future, we should be more willing to take on the task of the zero rate option or options close to it, and really spell out the cost of that, and to confront those who support that option with the task of explaining how that will be afforded. I don't think we've done that to the extent that we could have. Perhaps we can do it next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Walker.
To one part of this where I've been consistent, and that is part 7 around the accommodation targeted rate. I think councillors know that in principle that rate is unfair, grossly unfair, because it charges the accommodation sector for costs associated with tourism, of which that sector is only 9% of the various areas of the tourism economy that benefit. So that sector is being unfairly charged. And secondly, we know that the level of inbound tourism into New Zealand is virtually zero. And frankly, we should dispense with this rate and not even persist with it going forward, because that circumstance is likely to continue for some time into the future. So I have a particular concern around Part 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers before I speak and reply? Okay. I'm sorry. Councillor Cooper.
I'm going to speak, Mr. Chairman, because there's been a lot of talk, and I think we just about talked ourselves out and we've got to a good space. Just an interesting to note, we talked about other rate increases in other areas. I flew back from Wellington this morning and talking to somebody in the lobby waiting for my taxi. He lives on the Kapiti coast. His house is worth $1.1 million and he pays $8,000 annually in tax, in rates. And so, you know, yes, it's hard for some people paying their rates, and I think we've got a fantastic, we've put $50 million aside to help those people, and I think that's the right thing to do. But I think a bit of perspective for us in Auckland, we get a lot. We provide a lot of services. There's a lot of free things that we give to our people and provide for our people, really good quality services and buildings. And yet, you know, my house is worth quite a bit more than that, and I pay $4,000. And that person in Kapiti pays $8,000. So I feel really grateful for what I get for my rates, and I know that's probably, people are going to poo-poo that, but I'm really glad I live in Auckland and I don't have to pay that level of rates.
Thank you, Councillor. Then finally, if there's nobody else, Councillor Simpson.
No, Your Worship, actually I won't. I think I've done my bit today. I'll just let it go. Yuki, your turn.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, look, nobody doubts that COVID-19 is having an impact right across our city. Some it's impacting severely on, some not at all, and many it will impact in terms of lower income. And there are a number of people, including myself, I've got to say, around the table, that genuinely wanted to look at the alternative option of 2.5. The reason that we never went for zero, was because we understood that it was unsustainable, that it couldn't be done without absolutely savaging the services we provide and Aucklanders rely on, and hugely damaging our ability to invest in the future and to help economic recovery. As it is, on top of the 600 temps and contract workers we have had to let go, we will be losing 500 positions. Our then Chief Executive told us that a zero rate would almost double the number of people that we would lose from the council. So we talk about hurt. Those would be the people that are really hurting, but not just the people who lost the jobs, but the people who were no longer getting the quality of services that they could have expected from us because we didn't have the people to carry it out. I looked at what the difference was between 2.5 and 3.5, and for the person on the average rate level for $1 million home, it was 47 cents a week. 47 cents a week, and the total impact, I think, of the 3.5%, Councillor, was $1.82 extra a week. Is that correct? I think it is. Looking at my finance people, and they're not disagreeing. And I'm not making light of that. Nobody ever welcomes having to pay more for anything. I don't, you don't, and our constituents don't. But for a relatively small weekly sum, that would have resulted in $86 million less expenditure by this council at the time we were going into recession. And each and every councillor around this table have said, we'd like more, we'd like this for our people in my ward, we'd like something else. But if we slash our ability to raise the revenue, how do we pay for the key services that we have to deliver? And the answer is that we couldn't. There was a Herald headline, wasn't there? Shock rates rise. But we've just heard from our officers that our rates rise is in fact generally lower than every other growth or metropolitan city in this country, after a decade of having probably the lowest rate increases of any city in this country. I talked to a couple of people. Jenny Shipley was one of them, and Paula Bennett was another. And Jenny and Burton said, God, when we moved up from Ashburton, we didn't realise how low the rates were in Auckland for what you get for them. Paula Bennett mentioned it because her mum had moved up from Ohope. She said, feel free to use this, and pay tribute to Paula in a great speech she gave in Parliament as a valedictory yesterday. She said her mum just was blown away by the fact that she was paying less than what she was paying in a town like Ohope. So are we shock horror gouging? And the answer is no. Are we making every effort we can to make savings and to achieve greater value for money? The answer is yes, and that's what we need to do. So I think we've reached the right decision with the rates that we are planning to strike today. We have the continued obligation on us to try to do more for less, and the obligation to find value for money. We won't relent on our efforts in that part. But will we make a decision freely to slash services in the way that will hurt the people that we serve, to slash expenditure on infrastructure that we've been waiting decades to put in place? And the answer to that is no, we won't do that. That would be irresponsible on our part, and that's not what these measures propose. So I commend these recommendations to the governing body, and has there been a request for, no request for having...
A division, please.
Okay, there has been a request for a division, so I'll ask Sandra to take a vote on division.
Mayor Goff.
Aye.
Councillor Bartley.
For.
Councillor Casey.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cashmore.
Aye.
Councillor Collins.
For.
Councillor Coombe.
Aye.
Councillor Cooper.
Or.
Councillor Dalton.
Aye.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Philippina. Aye. Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Henderson.
For.
Councillor Hills.
Aye, thank you.
Councillor Mulholland.
For.
Councillor Newman. For. Councillor Sayers.
No.
Councillor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Walker.
Yes, but if I can have my vote against A7.
Councillor Watson.
No.
Councillor Young.
For.
18. It's carried 18 votes to 3.
So I declare that carried 18 votes to 3. Thank you very much, councillors, for your decision, and thank you very much once again to our officers for the work that led to this point. We come now